For years, Red Skelton told interviewers he painted clowns because he didn't know why. Then he paused and admitted he did know, but he refused to explain. That silence followed him to his grave. When construction workers finally began demolishing parts of his estate, they broke through into a room that had been closed off and forgotten. Inside were over 1,000 paintings, personal letters, and objects connected to the son he lost in 1958. Nobody outside the family had seen any of it. The room had no windows, no door from the outside. Red had built himself a place where the clown didn't have to smile. Red Skelton came into the world on July 18, 1913 in Vincennes, Indiana. From the very first moment, loss was already part of his story. His father, Joseph E. Skelton, had died exactly 2 months earlier on May 20, 1913, after complications from a stroke. Red was born into grief before he was even old enough to understand it. His mother, Ida May, was suddenly left alone to raise 4 boys. Their grocery business was gone. Their home was gone too. What remained was struggle. For years, Red would tell a different story about his father. He liked to say Joseph had been a clown with the Hagenbeck-Koala Circus and had died under the big top. It was dramatic, but it was not true. Joseph was a grocer in Vincennes whose life had been worn down by alcohol and financial trouble. That truth was less romantic, so Red covered it with a myth. He was already learning how to turn pain into performance. The family's poverty was brutal. They slept in an attic where snow sometimes drifted onto the beds during winter. Ida May cleaned houses and scraped together whatever she could. The boys fought over food. Parents warned their daughters to stay away from Red, as if bad luck itself might rub off. That childhood hardened him, but it also sharpened him. Red learned how to watch people, how to read a room. By age 7, he was already working. He sold newspapers outside the Pantheon Theater, yelling headlines for pennies. Some days brought a lucky break, like the time a mason tipped him $5. But most days brought almost nothing. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1923, comedian Ed Wynn stopped and bought his whole stack of papers. More than that, Wynn took the boy backstage. Red saw the lights, the stage, the magic of performance, and something inside him locked onto it. That night gave him a dream bigger than poverty, bigger than the attic where snow fell on the bed. By 1925, while still barely more than a child, he had run off with Doc Lewis's patent medicine show. Medicine shows were rough businesses that sold fake cures to poor and desperate people. Red started at the bottom, earning around $10 a week, sleeping in wagons, eating scraps. The work taught him something important. If you could not hold a crowd, you disappeared. He sang, joked, stumbled, improvised, and slowly turned himself into someone worth watching. One story says that when he was around 16, he fell off the stage and smashed medicine bottles by accident. Instead of killing the act, it got a huge laugh. That mistake became material. Pain turned into comedy. He moved through tent shows, minstrel routines, burlesque houses, riverboats, and walkathons. On riverboats, Red performed for whatever audience showed up. Watching hobos along the banks, he stored those images away. Years later, they would live again in Freddie the Freeloader. Freddie was funny, but he also carried sadness inside him. Around 1930 in Kansas City, he was emceeing walkathons, brutal contests where people walked for endless hours while crowds watched them collapse. Red kept energy alive in rooms filled with fatigue. It was during this stretch that Edna Stillwell entered his life. She met him in Kansas City when she was a teenager working as an usherette. At first, she turned him down, but later at a walkathon, they crossed paths again and the connection stuck. They married young and broke. Red had talent and instinct, but Edna gave that talent shape. She rewrote jokes, built routines, organized his material, and managed money. She helped create the famous donut dunking routine and shaped the character of Junior, the mean little kid, complete with the line, "I doed it." Edna was one of the engines behind his success. By the mid-1930s, vaudeville had become a real path forward. His breakthrough came on October 7, 1941, when he launched his own NBC program, the Raleigh Cigarette Program. Radio was the center of American entertainment, and Red landed a powerful Tuesday night slot right after Bob Hope. Suddenly, the boy from Vincennes was entering millions of homes every week. With radio came the characters that made him unforgettable. Clem Cattlehopper, the country innocent. Willie Lump Lump, the lovable drunk. Junior with his mischief. These characters felt lived in. People quoted them. Hollywood noticed, and MGM signed him in 1941. Films followed in a rush. Then the war interrupted everything. After his divorce from Edna in 1943, he lost the married status that had kept him out of the draft. On June 6, 1944, the very day of D-Day, Red gave his final radio broadcast before reporting for duty. He entered the Army as a private. Eventually, the Army shifted him into performing for troops, sometimes doing 12 shows a day. These were soldiers carrying fear, exhaustion, and grief. He eventually suffered a nervous breakdown and developed a stutter. But at an Army hospital, he visited a badly wounded soldier who was not expected to live. Red kept coming back, telling jokes. Slowly, the soldier improved. Red saw that laughter was not just escape. It could be comfort. He was discharged in September 1945 and back on NBC radio by December. Inside, he was different. On September 30th, 1951, his first NBC television show aired. It won the Emmy for Best Comedy Show, and Red won Best Comedian. That season finished fourth in the Nielsen ratings with a 50.2 rating, meaning more than half of American TV homes were watching. CBS picked up the Red Skelton show in 1953 and moved it to Tuesday nights. It ran for 20 years. During the 1960s, it rose to number 2. Freddie the Freeloader became his most famous character, with sad eyes and clown makeup rooted in his father's myth. Clem Cattlehopper, Cauliflower McPug, Jr., and Dead Eye made Red feel like a whole cast of working-class America. At the end of every episode, he would say, "Good night and may God bless." It became a ritual. In the 1969 season, his monologue about the Pledge of Allegiance drew 200,000 requests for copies, a level of sincerity unimaginable in today's fragmented streaming world. Behind the camera, his life was far less simple. In 1943, Red married Georgia Davis, a younger MGM actress. They had a daughter, Valentina, in 1947 and a son, Richard, in 1948. In 1957, Richard, only 9, was diagnosed with leukemia. Doctors said it was incurable. Week after week, America watched Red make millions laugh while he carried private fear. CBS offered him time away. Red refused. He believed performing kept some sense of normal life for Richard, who watched from the hospital. They traveled the world, meeting Pope Pius XII in Vatican City. But the stress kept building. Red fell down a flight of stairs, then nearly died from a cardiac asthma attack. Doctors said he had taken 9 out of 10 steps toward death. He recovered and returned to the show. Richard's last day was heartbreaking in its ordinary details. 10 days before his 10th birthday, he spent his final conscious hours with his father, flipping through a Sears Roebuck catalog and pointing at gifts he wanted. He talked about Mighty Mouse toys and a cookout. He was still reaching for the future. Then a massive hemorrhage sent him into a coma. He woke briefly and said to his mother, "I can't see. Everything is fuzzy." He died at 8:35 p.m. on May 10, 1958. Red buried his son, and Johnny Carson hosted that week's variety show while Red disappeared into mourning. When he returned, he was not the same. Richard's room was left untouched, a shrine. Red would sit there alone for hours. He visited Richard's grave every birthday with a small cake, staying until sunset. Life magazine described him as a man deeply wrecked by grief. Yet he kept performing. What viewers saw was a polished entertainer. What they did not see was a man using comedy as a lifeline for his dying son. Georgia never recovered. Depression settled in deeply. Alcohol and other struggles tightened around her. They divorced in 1971 after 26 years. On May 10, 1976, exactly 18 years after Richard died, Georgia took her own life by gunshot. The same date had returned to claim another life. If there was one place Red poured that grief, it was into painting. Georgia encouraged his art, and in 1964 his clown paintings were shown at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. Originals sold. Prints sold. By the 1980s, dealers estimated his clown lithographs brought in around $2.5 million a year, more than television once had. The paintings were not just commercial objects. They were deeply personal. After Richard's death, Red painted obsessively. The clowns were self-portraits in disguise. Their smiles looked forced. Their eyes looked sad. They were hiding pain rather than expressing joy. The clown became the perfect symbol for Red himself, a man who spent a lifetime making others laugh while carrying private sorrow that never lifted. In 1970, CBS canceled the Red Skelton show even though it ranked number 7 in the ratings. The network was chasing younger urban audiences in what became known as the rural purge, the same sweep that killed the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, and Hee Haw. To the network, Red looked old. To viewers, he was still beloved. That same year, Red and Georgia divorced. The television empire was gone. His marriage was gone. When Georgia died, the blow drove him deeper inward. He withdrew to his 600-acre ranch in the Anza Valley. It became his hiding place. When listed for sale in 2018, it had nearly 10,000 square feet of living space for houses, a warehouse, and a 3-studio bunkhouse. It was built for privacy. Hidden inside that ranch was his private art space. The bunkhouse was where he spent his time. No producers, no cameras, no applause. Just canvases, brushes, oils, clowns, and silence. After his death, people found paintings stacked against walls, unfinished works, sketchbooks. Brushes left as if he had just put them down. It felt less like an art studio and more like a diary no one had read. He had completed over 1,000 oil paintings, most of them clowns. Originals sold for tens of thousands. What mattered more was what the paintings revealed. Loss, loneliness, childhood, distance, smiles that did not convince, eyes that looked too tired. The clowns held the things Red rarely said out loud. In one 1964 interview, when asked why he always painted clowns, he first said he didn't know, then corrected himself and admitted he did know, though he refused to explain. That tiny pause may say more than any full explanation ever could.